action plan to compile data throughout California for the purpose of developing a composite portrayal of the homeless population in the state, as well as services currently provided to people who are homeless. California has the highest number of people experiencing homelessness in the country. 1 in 94 Californians will experience homelessness throughout the course of a single year, and perhaps a few members of the legislature too. Homelessness is traumatic for those who suffer it, often leading to separated families, exacerbation of health conditions, a rise in affordable emergency room use, social and academic delays among children, higher rates of foster care, and greater likelihood of incarceration. In 2009, the Homeless Emergency Assistance and Rapid Transition to Housing Act reauthorized the 1987 program and increased prevention resources, including HUD grants for statewide homeless data warehouses. Provided funding is available, the state could use a data warehousing system to determine costs of services the state now provides to homeless persons and how those services might be more effectively delivered to decrease administrative and programs costs. And I do have two witnesses. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Sharon Rapport. I'm with the Corporation for Supportive Housing. We're a national nonprofit with the mission of preventing and ending homelessness, and we have 3 offices here in California. As Assemblyman Amiano said, we know California has the largest homeless population in the nation, but we have very little data about this population. Provided federal and private funds are available, AB 683 would create an integrated data system or data warehouse. And it could be used to determine what services homeless people are receiving throughout the state. In doing so, a warehouse would answer critical policy questions about what works for whom and at what cost. A data warehouse can also reduce costs the state now bears in sending reports to the federal government. Just to name a few, California now prepares reports on runaway and homeless youth, homeless prevention and rapid rehousing programs, and housing for persons with AIDS. A data warehouse would be able to run these reports at a fraction of the administrative costs. Agency department heads across the country have determined that data warehouses allow them to target resources more effectively for people who are in need or at risk, better informs policy, and better achieves efficiencies to their programs. For these reasons, we are sponsoring AB 683 and ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jen Padgett, the Executive Director of Community Technology Alliance. We're a nonprofit and the lead organization of the Bay Area County's Homeless Information Collaborative Rhino Data Warehouse. It warehouses data from the 11 Bay Area counties homeless management information systems. The aim of this project was to combine data sets across the 11 Bay Area counties so that we could report and analyze trends together to better plan as a region how to prevent and end homelessness. Community Technology Alliance has worked closely with others who have also created data warehouses across the country and over the years have a real-world knowledge base of lessons learned from our live experiments and from those who created similar projects. I can't tell you how exciting it is to finalize a project and to really begin to understand the population you've worked with for years. For nonprofits on the ground working to end homelessness, information sharing is everything. Until recent history, we would gather in small groups and communities to talk about what is working to end homelessness. But mostly, we have been working on our own hunches, in our own silos, and there has not been any community-wide and certainly not statewide data to support and back up efforts that we think are successful. Previous trends in this business have asked for outputs and not outcomes. Before, funders were asking how many people did we serve. Now the questions are, how many people did you house? How many stayed there? How quickly were you there able to do that? And how many did you prevent from becoming homeless? In addition, we also want to know, by housing the homeless, is it saving dollars? What burdens are they placing on our welfare, hospital, criminal justice systems that were alleviated because we took action? All of this information is collected in the systems across the state. The problem is the information exists in silos and systems that do not speak to each other. The state, by creating a warehouse, could bring these systems together to not only understand the scope of homelessness and at-risk impacts on society, but also to share and help implement data-proven best practices and to fund programs who are effective in preventing and ending homelessness. I've learned from experience that systems are much easier to implement with more reasonable timelines when the idea is supported by government. A data warehousing solution is the best way to understand the trends of homelessness while maintaining the privacy rights of clients we are serving and collecting personally identified information from. Modern technology has no limits, and putting all the information from different systems together is possible. Support of the bill will make a statewide data warehousing option viable. I urge your support. Thank you.
Can I ask the rest of the witnesses to be concise?
Michael Radigan on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, Santa Clara County, here in support.
Thank you, Michael. Well done.
Zach Olmsted with Housing California in support of the bill.
Greg Gier with the American United Cerebral Palsy. About half of homeless people have disabilities, so this is a particular concern to the disability community, and we support the bill.
Thank you, Greg. Any other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Committee members have any questions or comments of the author? Senator Lowenthal? That would be you, Senator Lowenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, as I understand, this really only goes into effect when the Department of Housing and Community Development receives either federal or private funds, right? And
Exactly.
do we have any idea or when that potentially could happen?
100 to 800,000, perhaps. But the programs would have to, pay for all of that. Maybe there might be some minor costs for some hardware, but they would carry the burden of the financing.
All right.
Is that correct?
I think it's a great idea. I just caution you, as a state, our ability to handle data and collect data has not been great so far. And so I would just hope that the systems that are developed that really are able to be used, and those that are out there on the front lines help to develop the system, and it's not just a top-down system, which I think would continue to cause us a lot of problems.
If I could just make one comment on that, Senator. The data warehouse would probably not be located at a state agency. It probably would be handled by a vendor. The state agencies would just contribute the data to the warehouse, and HCD would be responsible for facilitating the collection of the data.
Okay.
So hopefully that answers some of your questions.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Senator Simitian.
Just want to ask the author and the sponsors as well, going forward, to be mindful of the privacy concerns and the data security concerns that a database of this type requires.
Absolutely.
Too many stories about people who are a little too casual about privacy and security issues, and I know you all want to respect the clients that you're trying to serve, and part of that respect is in the privacy and data security arena. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Amiano, would you like to close?
Yes, I would respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Okay. As soon as we get a quorum, we'll take it up. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Mr. Portantino's next, and as Assemblymember Portantino comes forward, just a couple bookkeeping items. First, apologize for us being so behind schedule. Lots of things going on up here. And just for the record, AB 1097 by Assemblymember Skinner, item number 16 has been removed from consent, so we'll consider that in file item order. And ACR 33 by Assemblymember Harkey, that's item number 17. Colleagues will have to go through the same exercise we went through last week and waive our rules when we get to that. To allow it to be on consent. With that, Mr. Portantino, you're here for your AB 294.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. AB 294 is a very simple measure which would allow the California Department of Transportation to allow 5 additional design sequencing contracts for transportation projects through January 1st, 2015. The bill requires a report to the legislature describing and evaluating the outcome of the contracts undertaken pursuant to those provisions. And under a previous pilot project, the department completed 18 of an authorized 24 projects and reported that the department envisions design sequencing as a valuable project delivery tool that can reduce project completion time when properly used in appropriately selected projects. AB 294 will provide Caltrans with additional flexibility and provide the legislature with important data regarding the design sequencing method. The bill has had bipartisan support, passing the Assembly 79-0, and today I have representatives who can testify on its merit.
Thank you, Mr. Portantino. Witnesses in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve Baker with Aaron Reed & Associates, representing the professional engineers in California government. Design sequencing has been authorized by the legislature on a couple of times previously. That authorization has expired. The department's experience has been that design sequencing has largely been beneficial in saving time in completing projects. We think that authorization should be continued. That's what the bill does. We encourage your support.
Mr. Chairman, members, Richard Markson, representing the American Society of Civil Engineers, 19,000 civil engineers in public and private practice, here in support. We agree with the sponsors and the author. It deserves to have continued evaluation by the state.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Any questions or comments from the committee? Seeing no one, I'm sorry, Senator Lowenthal.
Yeah, could you tell us, in extending this, and I'm supportive of it, but the data in both the Phase 1 study did not indicate that it really was successful or that there was limited. I think it said anywhere from 18 months on one side, positive, but then it took, was over 14 months. And it said that we would probably, although it wasn't really clear in the analysis, and maybe you can help me, that in Phase 2, it seems as if the data will indicate that things are Caltrans has kind of gotten up to speed and understands. Can you explain that? Because for me, it's really what those studies indicate, whether we support this or not.
Well, I think a couple things. Obviously, when you have a sort of a change in approach, it takes a number of projects to use it effectively, and I think that's why getting the feedback on how it's implemented is important. So with regard to the specific projects, I'll let the engineers touch base on why one project took longer than another. But conceptually, it just seems like we're getting better at it and we're using it more efficiently, and the data will hopefully prove that.
Well, I think we need the data. I mean, it's not only hopefully. I mean, that's really what we base our decisions on, whether in fact this is a valid approach. And if it's a valid approach, we should be supporting it.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think what the department has learned, first of all, they've learned a lot. And in the Phase 1, they used the authority for some big projects and some smaller projects. And the areas where they had an issue was on one of the bigger projects. And so they've learned how to fit the authority to the size of the project. They're using it on medium and smaller projects and experience significant faster timelines now when it's not a big, complicated project.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I'm sorry, Vice Chair, Senator Gaines.
So I thought Senator Lowenthal's questions were good ones. And is this actually going to speed the process up in terms of getting projects built and completed?
That's the hope.
I mean, that's the goal ultimately,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to close?
When you have a quorum, I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Portantino. Ms. Shimada, you're next if you're prepared to take it up, or we can take Mr. Blumenfeld, who's been in here a little while, just so everyone knows we go in file order. So you are next. If you would prefer to take a minute, we can take Mr. Blumenfeld. So just those of you who are joining us who may not come often, what we're doing right now is we're waiting for quorum. So we're meeting as a subcommittee, hearing the items. We can't take action until we actually have a quorum, which means we need 5 members here. And all the members are busy. I was presenting a bill in committee over in the Assembly, so that's why everyone's not here. It's not out of lack of respect or the fact that they want to be here. It's that they're in other committees. Ms. Shimada, would you like to present on your item number 7, which is AB 511?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I am pleased to present AB 511, which seeks to establish a statewide standards for meteorological evaluation towers. For those of you who are not familiar with meteorological evaluation towers, also known as METs, these are towers that are generally used in the wind industry to measure wind currents for potential siting of alternative energy sites. And they are most commonly less than 200 feet in height. There are current FAA regulations that govern the kinds of markings that are needed for towers 200 feet and higher. However, METs have become more in common use as we are trying to address our renewable portfolio standards here in California that, as you know, are increasing as the legislature takes positions on increasing the standards for RPS. Members, this bill came about really out of some of my own reading of online news and in the wee hours, sometimes when we get home from our long days here in the legislature. I saw a story about a pilot named Stephen Allen, who was an experienced agricultural pilot, had just loaded his plane to do some seeding work in the Webb Tract area in Contra Costa County. Unfortunately, Mr. Allen, despite his many, many years of experience as an agricultural pilot, flew into a meteorological evaluation tower that he did not see, and he lost his life as a result. When I saw news of this accident, it just struck me that, this was how did an experienced pilot who had known the area and flying in the Delta for many years and doing his work as an agricultural pilot, how did he fly into this tower? Members, this tower was built at 198 feet in height and did not have any of the required markings that the FAA requires of towers 200 feet and above. Permission to refer to the prop, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely.
Thank you. There are two pictures there for members to see. The first, of course, is a photo of the pilot, Mr. Stephen Allen. And next to his photo is actually an actual photo of an existing wind farm. And members, I would like to ask you if you could see where the meteorological evaluation tower is in this actual photo. If you are not able to see it, if you can look where those red tape markings are, that is actually where the meteorological evaluation tower is located. We bring this photo, which is an actual photo of such a tower sited with a wind farm, to illustrate how difficult it is for anyone to see where that tower is sited. For these reasons, because we know that there are many people, not only the agricultural pilots, but also public safety pilots and people who are working for the Sheriff's Department or in our fire service, that have to fly at low levels. We believe that there needs to be a clear statewide standard requiring that meteorological evaluation towers conform to existing federal law for towers 200 feet and above. The tower that unfortunately resulted in the loss of the life of Mr. Stephen Allen was built at 198 feet, perfectly legal with no markings, but resulting in the needless death of a family member, a father, someone who was supporting the agricultural industry in California. And with that, members, I have some witnesses that I brought with me today. I would like to have them self-identify and present testimony at your discretion.
If I can just interrupt you for a moment, we have a quorum, and I know that there's some interest in this item, so I'm going to ask the Secretary to call a roll.
Senators Desaulniers.
Here.
Desaulniers present. Gaines. Here. Gaines present. Harmon. Huff. Kehoe. Lowenthal.
Here.
Lowenthal present. Pavley. Rubio.
Here.
Rubio present. Simidian. Simidian present.
All right. Your witnesses, it's all yours. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Gail Back. Stephen Allen was my father. I remember a story he used to tell me often. It was in the early 1980s, and I was just a toddler. My family was enjoying a backyard get-together when I wandered away and fell into a pool. My dad saw bubbles coming from the pool. He went closer to get a better look, only to see me lying at the bottom. He jumped in and rescued me, saving me from certain death. This was the type of person Steve Allen was: a beloved husband, father, and friend to many. His passion and life's work was being an agricultural pilot. He was an exceptional pilot with many certifications, 39 years of experience, and he was a former commander of the Sacramento County Sheriff's Air Squadron. As an industry leader, his peers respected him immensely. Some even called him the best of the best. Yet his premier piloting skills and his personal attributes weren't enough to save his life. His plane was snatched out of the sky like a rabbit in a snare when he hit that unmarked tower. He was killed immediately on impact. I can't comprehend how an almost 200-foot tall, barely visible obstacle can go unmarked. Yet today, this is the case. If anyone could have avoided that crash, it would have been my dad. He was professional and conscientious. His flying skills were remarkable. The pill of his death is so hard to swallow because I know for sure if that tower had been painted, or if it had just one single light blinking on the top, he would be here today. The solution to this deadly problem is so simple that it stings like salt in my wounds. Today, I am concerned for other pilots. It's not just ag pilots who are at risk. In fact, any low-flying aviator is at risk, including law enforcement and emergency medical services. They are all in danger of suffering the same fate as my dad. Assembly Bill AB 511 would require the METs to be marked, eliminating this deadly hazard to many. I'm thankful to Assemblymember Yamada and her staff for introducing this life-saving bill. Unmarked towers are deadly, and my father paid the ultimate price. I hope his legacy will be one of effecting change to save others. You can make sure that he did not lose his life in vain by passing this into law. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. I know that was hard, and I know that all of us appreciate your grief. Next witness.
Good afternoon. My name is Karen Allen. I'm Steve Allen's wife. On January 10th, 2011, life as I knew it ended. Steve Allen, my husband of 23 years, was killed when his ag plane hit an unmarked MET that was constructed to deliberately avoid current FAA regulations for safety markings. To crop dusters, medical emergency helicopters, military operations, firefighters, law enforcement aircraft, and utility line patrol flights, the difference between a 200-foot tower regulated by the FAA and the 198-foot tower that killed my husband is academic. On that fateful day, Steve and I, best friends and business partners, once again headed off to the airport together. We had worked hard building our business and took great pride knowing Steve was one of the most skilled, experienced, and respected pilots in agriculture. During 33 years of ag flying, he logged more flight hours and landings than career airline military pilots, than more flight hours than most career airline and military pilots, with busy days seeing more than 100 takeoffs and landings. Please understand that if anyone could have avoided that unmarked tower, it would have been my husband. The NTSB investigator at the crash site stated the MET was virtually invisible against the gray sky. Eyewitnesses stated there were no maneuvers to avoid impact, confirming that Steve never saw it. Imagine a tower the height of a 20-story building, no wider than this piece of paper that I'm holding, painted gray to blend in with the overcast and horizon. If AB 511 had been in place on January 10th, my husband would be alive today. Without AB 511, The clock is quickly counting down on the next utterly avoidable fatality. The role of aviation in agriculture is critical. Crop production would be cut nearly in half without it, spreading dire financial impacts to both farmers and consumers. Mosquito abatement programs accomplished by ag pilots are crucial to disease control. Although the ag flying industry supports wind power development, we are sounding the alarm about fatal consequences of unmarked towers. I promised my husband shortly after his death that I would do everything possible to make safety marking of MET towers the law of the land. I can barely comprehend that I'm here today asking, pleading, begging you to support legislation that should have been in place many years ago. Please pass AB 511 and make California the 4th state to implement safety markings for the METs. You will be preventing senseless tragedies while setting the standard for MET safety laws nationwide. I brought this picture of Steve so that there'd be a face to go along with the story. There is nothing you can do to bring my husband back to me, his daughters, his grandson, the rest of his family, and countless friends, but you can ensure that his death is the last one in California caused by an unmarked MET. Please help me keep my promise to my husband and support AB 511.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both for coming in your testimony, and we're very sorry for the loss of your husband and your dad. Other witnesses in support?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Louis Brown on behalf of the California Agricultural Aircraft Association. Our members are those professional pilots that not only provide services to the agricultural industry, but provide health and safety services. They apply the products that mosquito vector control districts need. They apply seed, fertilizer, and other crop protection tools. I provided to the committee, just in case you're not able to see that tower on this poster, which is nearly invisible, a brochure from the Federal Aviation Administration that they put forth. Towers unlit plus unmarked plus uncharted equals undetected. This is from the FAA basically stating that any of these towers that reach a height of 200 feet or more would fall under their regulations. But even the FAA recognizes that MET towers fall within a height of 195, 197 feet. One would have to question if the wind is really that different from 195 to 200 feet, or if this is simply just a case so that we don't have to have these safety precautions put on these towers. We also know that, analyzing the market, these towers are available. You can buy highly visible towers that would meet the requirements that we're talking about, the paint requirements, the lighting requirements. The solar panels are available, and the solar systems are available to operate the batteries for a number of years. So basically, because there is no state law in California, is why we have any number of these METs going up within hours, like the FAA brochure says that they can be installed, within hours that don't meet the minimum safety requirements of those towers meeting 200 feet minimum height. So all we ask is that you bring these towers up to the same safety standards that other towers regulated by the FAA have to meet, and vote aye. I have with me today Gary Del Carlo, past president of the CAAA and a current pilot, to say just a few words in support, but also then answer any technical questions that you might have for a pilot as they're maneuvering around the fields and the countryside with these undetectable towers.
Good afternoon. My name is Gary Del Carlo. I own Haley's Flying Service in Tracy, California. I have been in agriculture aviation now for 42 years. Generally, general aviation and commercial aviation throughout the United States operates with markings, and these markings are to indicate airport positions, runways, taxiways, obstructions near the airports, and any unsafe situation that would or could possibly occur is marked on sectional charts. Now, even the lighting systems that are out there that have been in place for years now are to assist the pilots. And when towers were first being constructed throughout the valley, they were lit. And then the FAA rule came in, and with a height restriction, there was nothing to follow up, and it fell into the radar. So we now have a situation where we have construction of towers for cell phone and for information gathering that are important. They're needed, but they have become a nuisance, not only to commercial aviation, but to general aviation, to the public, because not only do we fly in this area, so does the public. And simple markings like are established and a standard could be established to identify these towers at different heights would alert the pilots of their positions and of their heights. In the situation that Steve got himself into, and I knew Steve very well, and I knew that he was a very qualified and very, very good pilot, did not have time to make any evasive actions to that construction, to that tower. If it would have been lit, if he had seen it ahead of time, he probably would have never flown towards it to start with. But if it had been distracted, the lights would have been enough for him to make an evasive move and get away from the tower. Now, I can tell you that in my career that obstructions are something that we learn to work with and work around. So the better the markings, and nothing elaborate, a paint scheme, something that is standard, a lighting system at various heights would identify and alert the people flying not only in agriculture but in law enforcement and other areas that work in low-level altitudes of where it's at, how high it is, and what to expect when they get there. So I appreciate your time and looking into this, and this bill that's pending is very important, not only to the commercial aviation industry, but also to the public. So thank you very much.
Gary, before we go to the other witnesses, and I have a couple questions, and forgive me because I'm not a pilot, and the goal of what we're trying to do and your commitment to your husband, I'm quite confident we will realize. But how we do it as a non-pilot, and I know I had a good conversation with the author yesterday, both of us being strong supporters of our renewable portfolio standards and trying to get as many alternative fuel sources as possible. So struggle a little bit as being a non-pilot is what's the best way. So you both, Louis, you represent ag pilots. Is this an issue mostly for ag? Is this something we should be doing just in the ag areas, or there are places where these facilities are going up in fairly remote areas? So as a pilot, I mean, I was a little bit horrified to hear that, for instance, Wyoming has a registry, I think, which would be a good thing. But for a pilot, you don't know where these facilities are. So I'm just trying to figure out, all that is a manner of asking you as a pilot, is this the best and most effective way, considering the resources, that we can assure that what happened to Mr. Allen won't happen again?
Well, what gets involved in here is different aspects of aviation.
Right.
Of course, in the agriculture area, we're concerned about the agriculture aircraft. Mm-hmm. But outside of the agriculture areas, when we proceed into the foothills or into the mountains, you have forest services, you have rescue, you have air ambulance, you have people flying low level through all these areas all the time, and firefighters. So these structures there should be an established standard lighting system for these structures above the ground level. A simple way, anything 50 feet above the ground, a light. And every 50 feet, every increment above that should be a light. If you see 3 lights, you know you got a 150-foot tower that you're approaching. with a red light on top of it. Something, some type of a standard, regardless of the area, I think really needs to be addressed.
So for you, it's not just the issue of the interface with agricultural uses and what Mr. Allen was doing that day. But
I'm sorry? What was
as
that?
a pilot, you're saying that you need this not just in agricultural areas.
No, it's because aviation, it has different areas where it's used.
Understood.
The agriculture aviation is, of course, in agricultural areas. What we're here discussing today, we think is very important. But to exclude areas outside of the agriculture area just creates another safety hazard. Because if you're going to, if it's going to be allowed to for tower or construction of towers outside the area that aren't unmarked, then people that work in that area in other aviation fields, whether it's law enforcement, forestry.
Are these the only kind of uses that are in this category right now, as far as you know? Are there other towers that come in under 200 feet that similarly don't have these markings? I'm asking you this as a pilot.
There's the cell towers are generally between 85 and 125 feet, and although they're freestanding, the thought is that these towers are being freestanding or larger structures, so they're easier to see, and there is some validity to that. But still, if the conditions are right, they become virtually invisible, and it's a real safety issue. And I know that since this rule has changed, and talking with some of the people that work around these cell towers, because there's maintenance crews all the time, and we ask them about lighting and stuff. He says, well, since all this has transpired and light requirements have changed, well, the construction and the maintenance and the operational cost of these towers, that lighting and maintenance cost is not included in that. So the people that have these construction towers constructed now, those costs have never worked into the system. So now, if any new tower, anything existing that we can get those marked, it'd be great. But I think any new construction that's going to go up now should fall under the scrutiny of markings some way, and markings at increments to identify its position and its height.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Del Carlo. Mr. Rubio, do you have some questions now? Or
I missed Mr. Darkello. Who do you represent? I know you're a pilot, but a pilot for the ag industry or a pilot association? Who is it that you represent?
I own an agriculture application business.
Got it.
Tracy.
In Tracy. Okay, I have a question then. First, and let me echo what my colleagues have said for the loss of your father and husband. This process is ugly, so don't allow it to be a reflection of our grieving with you for the loss. Please don't let that be a reflection of it. I hope you know where I come from, the great southern San Joaquin Valley. I just drove it last night, yesterday, and again today. And I have the benefit of driving hundreds of miles of agricultural land and going through the Tehachapi Mountains, where you have both wind projects in existence. Reading your bill, it has a trigger that calls for lighting and marking to occur for a wind turbine that would be within 50 feet to 200 feet, correct? Yes. I just Googled, so I want to preface that I Googled it online, but a telephone pole is 55 feet. Now, I've always been amazed watching the crop dusters. I've been in a crop duster. I've flown around in a crop duster. How you navigate around the telephone wires and power lines that exist, the great power line that runs through the San Joaquin Valley through many agricultural fields. It is really art in how you avoid those lines. So could you address the issue of marking and the lack of lighting for those poles, and why we wouldn't go after those, but we would go after wind turbines?
Okay, telephone lines, as they're situated and they're planned out, generally, in most situations, follow the perimeters of the fields.
You just speak into the microphone so everybody can hear.
And so we all know that in this industry where telephone lines are, where they're situated. The 55-foot height of telephone pole lines is not a standard either, because there's some shorter and there's some taller, much taller than 55 feet. So that obstruction for us in the industry is a known factor. We know it's there. The towers that we're talking about that are going up are generally outside of the fields that we're working. They're not in the fields. These towers that can be on the edges of fields generally have not really been that much of a problem. But when you have towers going up in outside the areas, the agriculture areas, in the agriculture areas and outside of the fields that we're working, when we're talking about the lighting of them is to identify them. We know that they're there, right? We want to make sure that we're not distracted or our attention brought away from them, that tower is identified. Now, it'd be pretty difficult to mark every telephone pole. We know that. But the telephone pole system has been around, and we've been able to address that. It's this pop-up towers and cell towers that are really a problem. Telephone pole lines and telephone poles are visible. You can see them. I mean, and on the foggiest day, we don't fly, and we have to have at least a mile visibility for us to go out and fly. So being able to see telephone poles and telephone lines is not a problem. Seeing cell towers and these meteorological towers is sometimes impossible. I mean, you'll know it's there, you'll fly towards it, and you will not see it. So that's the difference.
You don't see it because of...
Well, the towers are the paint schemes on the towers. If you travel, Nick, when you're on your way back home, you see cell towers. You'll see them. They're a gray color.
Local government at times makes folks put on fake leaves and branches to make it look like a tree, so it blends in even more. That in itself is acceptable. I mean, trees, something that's out there that looks like a tree, you're going to avoid.
You have no problem.
So if we could make them look like a tree, you'd be all right with it.
I would be fine with that. If every one of those towers had branches sticking off it, it would make me happy.
Okay.
But
all right. You've answered my question. I appreciate it. I have a question for the author. I mean, that's a great segue into two questions that I want to ask you, and then as we get through all of the supporters and opposition, I'd like you to address, on one hand, for the cell towers, particularly local government, on one hand is requiring those who are putting them up to either A, have them blend in with the environment, or two, requiring industry to do what's called blight studies. So we have to then study through CEQA the impact that lighting would have on a neighbor in a community. So for something that would not apply necessarily for an agricultural region, but when you get up into the Tehachapi Mountains, for instance, you'll have a significant issue if you have hundreds of windmills and you essentially have them all lit up. I was very surprised at the controversy that that portion of CEQA will bring for local neighbors. So how do you reconcile that within your bill? I'm curious. And second, I've heard loud and clear from the ag industry, and I think it is a serious issue, and I think it's one that we should address in this committee, Mr. Chairman. Who I have not heard from are the safety pilots, those who you contend once you get beyond the agricultural region, who then have to fly in mountainous terrain, deal with towers, trees, etc. I'd like to hear from them as to why they think this bill is needed, and I have not heard that yet. So I just want to plant those two things with you.
Well, if I may answer first your first question, I came from local government as well and very familiar with the controversies and the requirements necessary to site a tower, a cell tower, even something that is proposed to be a location for a cell tower. I think that any responsible developer, whether they're trying to build homes or build wind farms or build shopping centers, has an obligation to fulfill those kinds of standards that achieve the highest levels of safety, whether the area is going to be populated or not populated. It's just part of the cost of doing business. So I'm not sure if that is an answer to your question about are you talking about more about the aesthetics of the towers or just the actual siting? I apologize if I did not understand the
That's okay. No, I appreciate
question.
I appreciate your position that it is the cost of doing business. However, we're not just talking about the cost of doing business. We're talking about avoiding future losses of lives.
Absolutely.
And with that said, from a policy perspective, then where do we draw the line in establishing what is the standard? Because if that's a standard, then should we not require every power line throughout the valley and the mountainous range to also have similar markings and lightings? And I appreciate that telephone lines are in the perimeters, but I've seen on countless times the crop dusters go around. I mean, you don't just fly within the boundary of the field. You fly all over the area. So how do we, it's not just the cost of doing business, it's applying a standard for which provides not a false veil of security for pilots who are flying. And so that is one issue that I am wrestling with as I read your bill.
Thank you. Well, if I may speak to that, Mr. Chair, also,
Sure.
Meteorological evaluation towers by their very nature are temporal. They're not designed to be there on a permanent basis. They're there to measure wind current for the feasibility of siting larger wind farm towers, such as you see in the actual photo there. So I think there is a fundamental difference between permanent structures like telephone poles and other cell phone towers and so forth. It's the temporal nature of these METs as well as the way they are structured. They're very, very narrow, very difficult to see. As I say, the tower is there. It's where those two little red tabs are. And I think the fact that we in California have amongst the highest, if not the highest, standard in the nation for renewable portfolio standards, as Mr. Simidian, who is a champion of that, I believe Mr. Desaulniers already correctly said, we had a good conversation about our joint commitment to ensuring that our energy needs are met. But while we are doing so, I believe we have an obligation to make sure that not only our ag pilots are protected, but also anyone that is flying for us for public safety reasons, medical emergencies, and so forth. I believe they deserve that protection, sir.
One last question, two final questions. Is anyone here then able to speak on the experiences and the need for this from the public safety standpoint?
We have not had contact directly from anyone in the public safety community. However, we could certainly arrange for that to happen quickly if that would change your mind.
Well, I don't know if it would change my mind, but I think it would be beneficial. But in this juncture in the legislative process, would you entertain, because I believe this is an issue for the valley floor and for other agricultural regions throughout the state. The issue that these may pop up within a very short time frame presents a real challenge to people who are doing their business. Very clear, and I see that. Your bill goes beyond that. And so I'd like to know, would you be willing to entertain an amendment that would narrow the scope of this bill to resolve the issue that's before us this afternoon so that we don't reach beyond perhaps what we're trying to accomplish today, and that is to see to it that a father never has to lose his life flying a crop duster?
Well, with all due respect, Senator Rubio, this request for an amendment has come up rather recently. And I have certainly mulled that over in a very quick fashion. But I have to say to you that I don't believe that we should be narrowing the scope of protecting people who put their lives on the line for us. And I would find it difficult to address that in this context. I believe that any bill that comes forth with Yamada as an author has been vetted as good public policy to the best of our ability. We're always happy to accept amendments that improve and strengthen the bill. But what I'm being asked to do is to essentially narrow and provide exceptions for certain categories, perhaps of locations of these proposed meteorological evaluation towers. And I just don't think that I would feel comfortable having the potential death of another individual, whether they're an ag pilot or someone in the sheriff's or other fire safety profession, to be at risk. And so for those reasons, I would respectfully say that, we'll certainly be willing to discuss it a little further, but I would be very reluctant to take any steps to narrow what I believe is an achievable, very nearly cost-neutral activity. We heard some estimates of what it would cost to retrofit existing meteorological evaluation towers. I'm sure we'll hear from some of our opponents when we get to that point in the hearing about what the cost would be. But, somewhere in the range of $3,000 is what we understand to be fairly close. Probably I shouldn't have given that amount away. Now they're going to come and double it. But I would just say that I would be reluctant to take any steps to put anyone's life at risk, knowing what I now know about METs, what they look like, how quickly they are put up, and the purposes for which we are all agreed, I think, in addressing new energy sources for the well-being of California. So thank you, sir, for your question.
Well, I appreciate your answer, and my intent in putting it on the table was to try to solve a problem that met the need of everyone listed on your bill as a supporter. Mm-hmm. If public safety had such an issue with it and we were really trying to save their lives, I would think then when I read on the support list I would find someone representing a public safety entity, and I do not.
Understood.
So in trying to not allow perfection get in the way of progress, I was hoping that we might today be able to engage in a discussion that would solve the issues for the California Agricultural Aircraft Association, for the California Agricultural Commissioner and Sealers Association, and one of the finest counties in this state, which is Kings County Board of Supervisors, which I'm proud to have the honor of serving, because that's what I'd like to hope to achieve. You did mention you'd be willing to discuss it further, so I don't know if the chair would entertain perhaps allowing for that to occur in one way or another, but from my vantage point to move forward with this bill today, it would be to resolve the issue for those entities for which I just listed and have the bill reflect as such.
Do we, and I know we talked about this a little bit, do we find out how many of these might be up in the state of California at any given time, the prospecting, as I refer to them, towers?
Well, Mr. Chairman, and I believe this is correct as of this moment, we have made attempts to get that statistic. However, have not
Okay.
been able to get that information. In some sense of the word, it is proprietary. That's part of what is going on in this bill.
I was just wondering.
But thank you. We don't even, frankly, know how many of these there are.
We can ask that when
we
the
will.
opponents get up.
Thank you.
The Vice Chairman, Senator Gaines, has a question, then Senator Simidian.
Yes, great. Thank you.
And just to remind everybody, I started this by interjecting because I wanted to get the pilot's opinion. So at some point we can finish up with the support testimony and then get on with it. Senator Gaines.
Yeah, to Mrs. Allen, I'm very sorry about the circumstances for your husband and for your father. And I have an uncle that was a pilot up in the Red Bluff area and was flying over the Sacramento River. We think that he was probably looking, it could have been his children down at the river. It was a summer day, and hit some power lines going over the bridge, and he lost his life. So I can understand what you're going through, and I want to do everything I can to try to support this legislation, but I do need clarity. My analysis is indicating that this is creating standards to increase the visibility of meteorological evaluation towers. Is it limited to that?
This bill stipulates only to METs, but am I anticipating your next question?
Well, I'm just looking for clarity because that's an easier decision for me if it's simply on that one specific issue.
This bill speaks to regulating meteorological evaluation towers to current FAA standards.
Okay, because there's been discussion about cell towers and other issues. And
that'll be my bill next
year.
Okay,
so we're just narrowing. It is narrow as it exists as you bring it forward.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that helps me a great deal. And I'm just completely blown away that there hasn't been some sort of regulation on these towers, that we would allow these to go up without any sort of ability to identify them. And I don't know what the solution. Maybe you could help me in terms of how will they be identified? Are we using lights? Are they going to be painted?
Yes.
Well, if I may,
I could certainly speak to that, but I know we have many experts here. There will be alternating colors, orange and white. Minimum of 7, I believe, alternating patterns on the tower. In addition to balls on the guy wires, and then the contrast of the ground cover also has to be visible to the pilot. I hope I got that all right? Right? Do I know my bill? Oh, and the light. Yes. Don't want to forget the light.
Okay, that helps quite a bit. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Gaines.
Thank you for bringing the bill forward.
Senator Simidian.
Thank you. Do we have any data on how many of these accidents have occurred over the last year, 5 years, 10 years?
Yes, we do.
Okay. It's in the analysis, and I missed it because I was...
Yes, we do.
Tell me where it is in the analysis, because I have my analysis open.
The National Transportation Safety Board does have that data, and it is in the analysis.
I apologize, I'm struggling.
I think there's 9 or something, correct?
There were 9 of them.
9.
Let me so I can repeat it.
I'm sorry, I don't know that you lost your...
Right here. He reports
9 collisions. Okay.
No, 3 about the tower shorter than 200.
Could we get a little clarification through the chair on that? It says the National Association reported 9 fatalities for the years 2000 through 2011. Is that nationally?
Yes.
2 were in California.
2 of those 9 were in California.
Yes, that's correct.
Well, obviously the loss of any life is tragic, but we're talking about 2 of these over a 10-year period in California? Do I have the...
Is that correct?
So we're talking about 2 of these in the state of California.
That's correct.
And these are the fatalities. Is there data on other crashes?
I believe that all of those stipulated to were fatalities. There were no survivors when these kinds of accidents occurred.
Mr. Chairman, this is Louis Brown on behalf of the California Ag Aircraft Association. According to those statistics, again, National Ag Aircraft Association, there was only one tower strike in the country that actually did not result in a fatality. So if you take those statistics, an overwhelming percentage of them, when you strike something going 150 miles an hour, you do not survive.
Again, this is a hard conversation, as Senator Rubio mentioned, but we're in a nation of 300 million people. We're talking about less than one fatality a year over the course of a decade. Is that a correct restatement of the data?
Of the tower strikes.
Of the tower strikes,
But the
which is
guy wires have led over hundreds of collisions.
Michelle, I'm sorry. So why don't you go ahead and get a microphone? If it's
all right. Well, let me just follow up. The next question is, what's the FAA rule, if there is one, for those of us again who are non-pilots, for what level are folks supposed to be flying? Presumably, we don't expect general aviation to be flying at 200 feet throughout the state of California. So if somebody could help me parse what the rules are, that would be helpful.
Well, elevation above the ground is under the FAA rules. Generally, general aviation, the restriction above the ground has to do with congested areas. So if there's a congested area, then you have to be at least 1,000 feet above it and 500 feet to the side of it. Now, what's a congested area? That's kind of a loose description, because under the FAA rules of Part 91, if you're not supposed to fly low over a congested area. A congested area could be two people, could be a structure. Generally, if there's aircraft out doing photographic flights or sightseeing, which occurs a lot in the valley, as long as they're not intruding on structures or people, there really isn't a height.
So, as in your understanding, then, if I'm, and I don't mean this disparagingly, if I'm out in the middle of nowhere and there are no people and there are no structures, the FAA rules say that I could fly at 500 feet, 200 feet, 50 feet, 20 feet off the ground, and I'm still legal. Is that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful for me to understand. And I'm going to want to hear what the opponents have to say. I don't even want to ask the author for an immediate response. I just want to ask the author to be thinking about this while we hear from the opponents. It strikes me as I look at the bill that I think there are 5 different requirements on the bottom of page 2. Excuse me, bottom of page 1, top of page 2. And I have read the analysis, which is why I was surprised that I had managed to breeze right by the fatality data. A, B, C, D, and E, bottom of page 1 and top of page 2. Some of those might be more challenging in some environments than in others. So I would ask the author to be thinking, as we hear from opponents, whether or not providing some flexibility about 3 of the 5. I made that up. I have no basis for saying that. But if we were to provide some flexibility so that 3 of these 5 things happened in each case, but with, in some cases, one might be easier to produce than another. In other cases, one might be less expensive than another. So I would just ask you to think about that as a way to provide some flexibility. And then I guess I would raise the same request that Senator Rubio did about thinking about whether or not there's the ability to put some limitations on where the rules apply. The comments about height go to the fact that in some places this is an issue, in some places perhaps not so much. I understand the desire of the author to provide the maximum amount of protection, but I also think one way we can develop support for this kind of approach is to be careful and tailored in its application. Let me just ask.
Mr. Simonian, just if I could jump in, I apologize to interrupt. Unbeknownst to me or our staff, I'm told that the Assembly Democrats have an important caucus at 4 o'clock.
Yes.
So we're going to proceed, is the plan, and if we can get Assembly members to have staff present, if that's possible, we'll move through the Republican bills after this. But I just wanted my colleagues to realize the information that I got. So go ahead, Mr. Simonian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may just interject, I'll stay here. I would prefer to present my bill than go to caucus. Thank you. Well, I think my obligation is to my constituents at this time.
And I notice on the sheet that Ms. Brown alluded to that was passed out, the FAA does say that they ferry above 5 and stay alive, and that they recommend pilots fly above 500 feet except when the operation requires flying at a lower altitude. And obviously that's where the challenge comes here. Is it typically the practice to fly above 500 feet until it's time to actually engage in the task at hand, whether that's emergency rescue or crop dusting or other?
Yes, if we're working a field that's any distance away from our home base, then ferrying, what we call traveling back and forth, then 500 feet is it's recommended. And for safety, most of us try to adhere to that.
Okay. And then back to the author, if I may, through the chair.
Yes.
There's been, and again, if I've missed this, I apologize, but is it your intention that the bill apply retroactively to existing towers or only to new towers going forward?
We would expect all new towers to conform by the time they are put up, should the bill fortunately get its way to the governor's desk and sign. And we do also believe that there should be retroactivity.
So the expectation would be that every tower that's already up, which is unknown in number based on the staff's earlier comments, would have some period of time to get compliant.
That is correct.
And that period of time, if I missed it, is?
That is still being discussed.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smitty.
Okay, so move through. Sorry for the brief, not so brief interruption.
I'm
Other
sorry.
witnesses in support?
Mr. Lowenthal.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
Did you have something, Senator Lowenthal? Okay, let's try to do that.
Noelle Kramers with the California Farm Bureau Federation. I think this has been a very good discussion. I do want to point out we obviously depend on agricultural pilots, but agriculture is throughout California, and defining an agricultural area to limit, I think, would exclude a lot of areas that we rely on these pilots, not only in what you might consider typical flatland farming, but in forestry, in rangeland situations. And so I would be concerned about trying to narrow where we're trying to protect people's lives for safety purposes.
Appreciate that. Mr. Heim? I'm sorry, Senator Lowenthal.
That is the question, because the question has come up. It seems, and when I went through the brief summary of the fatal tower accidents, they're all agriculture. Everyone on this list was an agricultural. And you're saying that in other areas, but there's been no report in, let's say, in forests or other, there's been no report of any accidents there, only in agriculture, where they are actually. Why would you not be supportive of limiting it to agricultural land?
Well, I think the problem is, how do you define what is and is not agriculture for this purpose?
If we could define that, you would be okay with it? Let's say we could come up with an agreeable definition.
Well, it would depend on the definition, and
so
certainly
you're saying the problem is not that it's beyond agriculture, it's that we can't come up with a definition.
Well, certainly, timberland, we consider agriculture.
Has there ever been an accident in timberland? There's been no reported accidents I see here on timberland.
We don't have the information.
Well, I have in the...
No, in terms of your question, we don't have that available. But in answer to your question about defining agriculture, we believe we can do that. Every city and county has to, in their general plan, define what's an agricultural use or not.
Certainly, but I think the challenge there is that I'm not sure, we haven't heard from the opponents yet, but I'm not sure that would address their concern, because I think it would be much broader than what they are trying to limit it to.
Right.
And so that's the point that
I understand that with that. I'm just wondering, because that issue has come up here, if there was an acceptable way of defining that, regardless of where the opponents are or not,
Well-
would you be acceptable? Or does that meet your needs? Because I haven't seen anything that indicates that this is a problem in other areas.
Certainly, it's the Assembly member's legislation, so the decision is hers.
If I may, Senator Lowenthal, thank you for asking that question. I believe that part of our responsibility as legislators is to be preventive in nature.
Yes.
I would prefer not to wait for something to happen. Something's already happened. In this case, it happened to be in agriculture. While I appreciate the direction that some of the senators are going about narrowing or flexibility or definitions, I think it is very straightforward and simple that towers that are 200 feet and above, regardless of use in California, are under FAA regulations. When towers go up that are 198 feet in height, I have to believe that there's something deliberate about that. And, if I had had some other assurances during the development of this legislation or, the other discussions that we had, most of the discussions are now happening on this side because, as you may have noticed, this bill passed out of the Assembly with no votes. Unanimous votes in BNP, unanimous votes in APROPS, and a 78-0 vote on the Assembly floor. So I can only say that the questions are important ones. We are certainly always willing to listen. But when we believe a bill stands on the merits and are simple, straightforward, and conform to federal regulations that are actually now even further along in advising about METs, I just don't see that we should complicate matters by then putting uncertainty where there is certainty already. And I would prefer to be preventive than reactive.
That's Mr. Hyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ralph Heim from the Mosquito and Vector Control Association of California. The agricultural pilots provide an invaluable service for mosquito control, and we would urge your support as well.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support? All right. Witnesses in opposition? And while they come forward, the game plan here is, and thank you for your patience, is to go to Mr. Hall's bill next and let him present his bill. We know many of you have sat here patiently waiting for that one.
Thank you.
We think there's agreement on that one, and then we'll go through the rest of the bills in file order. And again, we apologize. We were unaware of the time of the Democratic caucus in the Assembly. We know all of these discussions, particularly around the budget, are very, very important. Mr. Governor.
Mr. Chair and members, Scott Governor on behalf of the California Wind Energy Association. I don't relish the opportunity to come up here, and I hope my comments are construed to be disrespectful to the family. Certainly it is a tragedy. There are a number of problems with the bill and questions that were raised that I'd like to comment on. As noted there, that tower actually isn't a farming tower. It's a tower often required by the California Independent System Operator to measure wind. And it's next to FAA-compliant wind turbines, which we think would be a reasonable sign that something is there. We agree with the suggestions raised by Senators Rubio and Simitian and Lowenthal that perhaps agriculture is a more prudent place to begin, since that's where the problems have been demonstrated. Of the 9 fatalities, 6 were actually on FAA-compliant towers in excess of 200 feet. So the bill would not be a panacea. In terms of the cost component in doing this and the difficulty in doing it, if one were to go to the San Bernardino high desert area, Palm Springs, one would notice towers along ridge lines. Those are actually carted in by helicopters. One doesn't simply go up and take those down easily. The cost to take those towers up and down is about $10,000 apiece, and we have no demonstration, as has been said, that anyone is actually flying within proximity of those towers. So it's a lot of money spent for something that none of the witnesses have demonstrated as a problem in a non-agricultural setting, which we think, again, is a more prudent area. When we're talking about safety in general, certainly Senator Gaines had a relative perish in a power line. I was reminded yesterday that Bill Graham perished in a power line as well. Many of the proponents raised cell towers. So if we're going to have a blanket policy in the state for safety, I would contend that perhaps we should do just that and have it apply to all of the towers as opposed to singling out a very specific subset of towers in areas that are often associated with FAA-compliant items. There are a number of technical problems, as Senator Rubio raised. Oftentimes in counties like Riverside, they want developers to have towers blend in with the environment. That is a specific requirement of the county. What they would then use under this bill is use the bill to challenge the project in itself under CEQA. That would seem to be counterproductive with the state's 33% RPS. There should be a specific safe harbor in the bill. So if you erect a tower in compliance with this bill, that can't be used against you in the permitting process. Another area, ground clearing, for example. Developers are specifically implored not to clear the ground, to disturb as little of the habitat as possible. This bill does the opposite. We would run into CEQA problems under this bill. I mean, despite the assurances that everybody wants 33% renewables, this bill is actually counterproductive in that arena because it would run afoul of CEQA. Again, we think there are avenues to work. Limiting it to agriculture is crucial. We haven't seen a demonstrated problem in other areas, and respectfully request that if this bill were to move forward, it be limited to those areas. The final comment is the red lights. Yes, there are solar units available to work on these towers. The problem we have experienced in applications where solar has been installed is that they're stolen. Much like people steal copper wire, people steal solar panels because they aren't mounted on the towers themselves. They are ground mounted. And they're large, so that often can run into permitting problems in and of itself. If a solar panel was stolen and the light were not functioning, what liability would the developer face? Because these are in remote areas. Nobody lives where these towers are. Would the developer face if the lights weren't functioning, again, due to theft, breakage, whatever it be? These are unique situations, and we ask that this bill kind of address those. So for these reasons, we are opposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Governor.
Mr. Chair and members, Don Gilbert representing TerraGen Power. I'll be brief. We too believe that there is a good solution to help avoid the tragedy that already happened by limiting the bill to agricultural areas. We think that that can be defined. It's been defined before. We don't think that by and large there is an issue with wind farms, existing wind farms, for all the reasons that have already been stated. Typically, that just hasn't been a problem. And the retroactivity issue is a challenge because we already have permitted facilities. As you know, wind is locally sited, locally permitted, so we don't even fully understand exactly how to reconcile a permit we already have that the local jurisdictions have issued with a new state law that would apply retroactively. The permit could be 20 years old or more, so that's a challenge that we just don't know how to respond to. And again, we do feel like a solution that deals with the problem that occurred, the horrible tragedy that occurred, would be to limit the application of the bill to ag lands. Thank you.
If any of you have any idea how many of these we have in the state, just sort of estimate, we would be delighted to know that. Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Member Steve Baker with Aaron Reed & Associates representing First Wind. First of all, we agree with the previous comments. We do think that limitation and having this apply to ag lands would be preferable so that we can continue developing RPS in other areas. In response to your question, I don't know how many of these are out there in California.
Are they in the dozens, hundreds? Anyone know? No.
I have no idea. I know I did talk to the developer of the Shiloh project in Solano, and for that existing facility that's up, they maintain 3, they're called PERC towers for right. ISO. So that's just one project. I don't
know. Thank you.
Emily Pappas for NextEra Energy. I would like to echo my sentiments for the tragedy that happened, but just to also add that oftentimes the approval for a Met tower to be placed and put up locally is used as a way for locals that don't want wind towers because of visual blight to be put up. And so requiring us to do things in addition to balls, but paint, lights, and the other items in your bill can make it more difficult for us to get the wind farm up and running.
Before you leave, I mean, the authors brought up the issue of came out of the assembly, now it's here. You've heard some concerns. Have you had the opportunity to discuss these possible remedies? You've all said you want to deal with the same issue that I think all of us are in sentiment to. So what happened? Is there something that has changed between when the bill was introduced and when it came here?
Simply a collective, we missed it. It wasn't.
But you're more than willing.
Say again, please.
A collective, we simply missed the bill when we looked at meteorological towers. We, as the non-practitioners, didn't associate them with wind, and we apologize for that. But nonetheless, we informed the author's office about 3 weeks ago of the concerns we had. So it's
okay. Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition? Further questions or comments? Senator Simidian, did you have something? Yeah, and so, Assemblymember, I think the crux of the problem, I think, has been well said, and I don't know what kind of opportunities, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, to work with. The ultimate, I think, goal would be to do this in a thoughtful way that would limit the possibility that what happened to Mr. Allen will happen again. I think you've heard that consistently from all of us, but we want to do it in the most thoughtful, targeted way. And this does not take anything away from what you have done already. So I'm just struggling with how best to do that. And I'm all ears as to how we could proceed. We could hold it over for a week. Your suggestion, you said that you don't want to take the amendment.
I would be very reluctant to narrow the scope of the bill simply because we have now heard the opposition from the wind energy industry. I just believe that we owe, the agricultural pilots as well as any other pilot that may be flying, and you are correct, Senator Rubio, that we did not engage with the public safety community directly on this issue, but we do know that there are pilots out there that are flying for other reasons in California. I think agriculture certainly is, if not the top, one of the top industries that we have in California. It's one industry that will never move and leave the state. So we do have to do everything we can to protect and strengthen the agricultural industry, and this is one aspect of it to provide public
Senator
safety.
Simidian has something, but
Yes.
We're in a, and I know that you're respectful of, this is a difficult position for all of us because we want to help you.
Yes.
I would make an offer that if, and I hate to do this because we've got a busy agenda and there's a lot going on, but it's partially in that spirit. We haven't had a lot of members. If we held the bill over for a week, and I hesitate to do that because I know we've got 25 bills, perhaps you and I could have that discussion and find out from public safety. So that's offered in the manner of a suggestion before we go to Senator Simidian.
All right, thank you.
I want to encourage the author to take the chair up on that suggestion. I think disappointing that people came to the conversation late. Understand the desire you have to be safety first. This will seem an odd analysis, but the reason I asked about the data, and again, any loss of life is tragic, but when we're talking about one fatality a year nationwide, I do think we have to show some balance in how we approach the issue. I spent 5 years before your tenure here unsuccessfully pursuing a cell phone safety law, and year after year after year I kept getting the where's the data, and I kept producing the data, and it wasn't enough, that thousands were dying unnecessarily. So I'm sympathetic, and I want us to get to yes, but I think we'd have a better chance of getting to yes if you could take the chairman up on his offer to take a week, engage the opponents, see if there isn't a way, either by providing some flexibility or by narrowing the focus or both, to get the yes. I'm convinced you've raised a bona fide and legitimate safety issue. That being said, I think the bill overreaches and would like to see if we can address your bona fide safety concerns in a way that's a little more narrowly crafted.
And I might say we may not be able to, so I don't want to raise anybody's expectations, but I say this just because of the spirit of the day, with our caucus going long and getting started late, and with you guys needing to go into your caucus. I hate backing stuff up, but we're in very historical territory here today in California, so that's the reason I offered. I'm not trying to suggest to you that there's anything untoward here. It's just we're in a weird space.
I understand that. I mean, I think of the choices that you have graciously offered, that is to hold the bill over, or if the bill even was moved and seconded today, it is slated to go down, and I would simply ask for reconsideration. Am I reading the chair correctly on that?
To be perfectly honest with you, I don't know, because we have so few members here, because there's so much going on in the building right today. So there's no tea leaves here, Assembly Member. I just
as long
think
as it's green tea,
we're,
it's okay.
we're trying to keep everything on course in a very chaotic environment.
Understood.
So that's the spirit that I'm offering into.
Then I will accept holding the bill over for the next hearing, which will be next week. With the commitment that we would certainly be willing to engage in further discussions, but with no commitments necessarily to change fundamentally what we are trying to achieve.
Absolutely, and I want to reassure that the family who's come here today that that commitment I heard from all of the committee members. So in that spirit, we will hold it over for 1 week, and we will schedule a meeting with you and the stakeholders as soon as possible, hopefully tomorrow.
Mr. Chairman, just before we let the author go, Senator Rubio raised the question of narrowing the application, and I agree with him that's worth pursuing. The issue I've raised is whether some flexibility on the 5 different elements is possible, and I just want to encourage the author to talk to her sponsors and supporters and see whether they think allowing some combination of 3 out of 5 for the sake of discussion still provides a significant enough safety improvement increment. And I understand that's the goal, but I just think that maybe some combination of those rather than prescribing all 5 might be sufficient to get the job done, but provide flexibility on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you, Assembly Member Yamada. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move forward now with Mr. Hall, and that is item number 13.
That's correct.
AB 720.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Assembly Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I would like to begin by accepting as authors' amendments the proposed language which has been shared with your committee in mock-up form. These amendments, 1, provide for January 1st, 2013 implementation date, amend the 20% contracting out threshold to 30%, clarifies that the 30% contracting out threshold applies only to the road commissioner for accounting work, exempts small counties from the contracting out threshold, ensures all counties utilizing the road commissioner authority are afforded the protection set forth in Section 22038, and requires counties to declare when they are performing a project under the road commissioner's authority. As amended, AB 720 would authorize a county voluntarily complying with the Uniform Public Construction Costs Accounting Act and the relevant provisions of the Public Contracts Code to take advantage of road construction flexibility options for county roads and highways. AB 720 will ensure that the local governments are fulfilling the spirit and the letter of the law when it comes to making public investments in our local roads and meeting our shared obligations to make the most of limited public funds for improvements to local roads and infrastructure. I respectfully ask for your aye vote. We have Mr. Mejia from the California Council of Laborers and Mr. Eddie Bernacchi from the political group here to testify, and many others.
Wonderful. Thank you. Please.
And I want to also thank some of our witnesses. They've traveled from a long way for their patience today.
We appreciate their presence and their patience.
Thank you.
We'll try to get through here quickly.
Mr. Chairman, members, Jose Mejia, California State Council of Laborers. And as the author said, I would like to go and take a moment to obviously express and ask the committee to acknowledge the presence of my brothers and sisters of Laborers Local 185 who have been joining us here and have witnessed democracy here for the most part of the afternoon. So I'd like to welcome them. I'd like to thank the author, obviously, for his bold courage to move forward on AB 720. We believe that it's a good move. We've been having several conversations with all those that initially had been opposing it. It's pretty much a result of what started with AB 1409 last session, and we believe we've come a long way. But I'll defer to representing the California California industry, CFAC, Eddie Bernacchi, who is advocating on their behalf and pretty much working on behalf of the industry on this issue.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator, Mr. Vice Chairman, or Chairman right now, and members of the committee. Eddie Bernanke on behalf of the Construction Industry Force Account Council. As Mr. Mejia has stated, this bill is a refined version of a bill carried by the Speaker last session, and is probably it's a culmination of 4 years of hard work and diligent work with all involved and all interested in this issue, the construction industry, the counties, and the public employees unions. We have a consensus measure based upon the author's amendments. The bill now will protect the integrity of the Uniform Public Cost Accounting Act and still provides flexibility to the counties to do maintenance and emergency work as they stated they've needed the Road Commissioner authority to do so, but also will provide that the private industry construction sector has the opportunity to bid on large new construction and reconstruction road projects throughout the state. So we think this is it's a fair measure. It's been a lot of work put into this measure, and we would urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Great, thank you. More
Mr.
witnesses
Chair,
in support?
members, Phil Vermeulen representing the engineering contractors and several other contractors associations in strong support. Urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, I'm Doyle Radford, Labor's Local 185 Business Manager. We cover 20 counties in Northern California. We want to thank Assemblyman Hall for his vision with AB 720, and we're in full support.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members, Dave Ackerman representing the Associated General Contractors. We were the original sponsor of the original legislation about 30 years ago, creating the Uniform Construction Cost Accounting Act, and we like to see it work well. We like to see it work efficiently, and this legislation moves it in that direction. We urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Great. Other witnesses in support?
Mr. Chairman, Todd Blumstein on behalf of the Southern California Contractors Association. This is a positive bill for the industry. We request your support. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Chair Member Cesar Diaz on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council. For the reasons already mentioned, plus also I'm a commissioner with the CUCAC committee. This bill actually does protect the integrity of the act, and respectfully urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Brett Barrow with the California Landscape and Irrigation Council. We are in strong support of the bill.
Thank
Kevin Pedrati representing the engineering and utility contractors and Gold State Builders Exchanges in support.
Thank you. All right. Other witnesses in support?
Mr. Chairman, and member. Terry Brennan on behalf of the Service Employees International Union. I think I'm kicking off the tweeners. We've removed our opposition. I'd like to thank the chair, Eddie, and Jose, your staff. We've been working on this for 4 years. It's been a mess for 4 years, but this bill strikes a balance between allowing road commissioners to maintain a staff for emergencies and maintenance and still allowing for work to be done by private contractors.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Witnesses in support?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Deanne Baker representing the California State Association of Counties, not here in support, but also here to actually remove our opposition.
Okay.
We want to express appreciation to Assemblymember Hall and particularly the sponsors. As Eddie Bernanke indicated, this has been a multi-year effort, and it has always been our intent to ensure that our public works folks have the ability to respond to the citizens' needs with respect to maintenance, emergency, and we think we've been able to strike a compromise that will allow us to go forward and do that, and we look forward to seeing the amendments from Ledge Council. So,
okay, great. Thank you. Now, are these witnesses in support?
No.
Okay. Opposition or neutral?
Neutral now.
Okay.
Jolena Vorst.
I'll take neutral.
Jolena Vorst with the Urban Counties Caucus. We're also in the same position as CSAC. We were previously opposed. Our record is opposed now, but with the amendments today, we believe it goes a long way to address our concerns. And once we see them and confer with our counties, we'll probably remove our opposition and change to neutral. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you.
Hi,
Yes.
good afternoon. My name is Lynn Lenzi. I'm with the law firm of Nielsen Merksimer on behalf of Contra Costa County, Marin County, and Riverside County. And we join with CSAC in withdrawing our opposition, and we appreciate the amendments that Assemblymember Hall has taken. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Tim Lynch on behalf of San Bernardino and Orange counties, not quite to neutral yet. We appreciate all the work the author has done, but as of this moment, we still have opposed positions and must keep those until we see the amendments in print.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other witnesses?
I would just like to recognize those in the audience who are standing in support. If you'll just stand, if you will, and just be recognized that they.
Yes, thank you for
in light
coming.
of time, we
appreciate
would
that.
not have all of them to come and state their position.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, any questions of the committee? Would you like to close, Mr. Hall?
With respectfully ask for your vote.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? We don't need a second. I'm sorry.
The motion is due pass
Roll
as
call. Thank
amended,
you.
and we refer to the Committee on Governance and Finance. Senators Desaulniers, Gaines.
Aye.
Gaines, aye. Harmon. Huff. Kehoe. Aye. Kehoe, aye. Lowenthal. Pavley. Rubio. Semidian. Aye. Semidian, aye.
Thank you, Assemblyman
Thank
Hall.
you so much.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Senators.
Yes, that bill is on call as amended. Thank you.
Good job, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Okay, who's up? Yes. Okay. Assemblywoman Conway, please.
Thank you to those
Great.
of you that are here.
How are you?
I'm okay.
Good.
Mr.
Great.
Chair and Senators. I'm here to talk to you today about AB 628, which we call our Inyo County OHV Trails Pilot Project. Several million tourists visit Inyo County each year. Many of these visitors use off-road vehicles. This boost in tourism plays a key role in helping the local economy, but the county also needs the tools to help protect the natural beauty of the area now and for generations to come. AB 628 is a pilot project that would designate selected county roads in an unincorporated area of Inyo County only, for combined use for more than 3 miles. This bill has to prove it's safe and effective in the 5 years because it's sunsetted. It'll provide better travel management. It's a tool for law enforcement to regulate activity, and it's to help local businesses and help people visitors get to food, fuel, and lodging. I am willing to take amendments to specify that once the Inyo County Board of Supervisors selects these routes for combined use, the CHP would have the authority to approve the routes for up to 10 miles. That's on select roads, not all of the roads, only select roads in the county. We currently enjoy the support of local law enforcement. I do have a letter from the Inyo County Sheriff that I can provide you, and we will take whatever steps are necessary to clarify that the intent and collaboration of these within the state. By connecting trails and trailheads, riders would also have access to food, fuel, and lodging in neighboring towns, benefiting Inyo County's economic development and quality of life for residents and visitors. This is a district bill, and
Great.
so I have some witnesses in support, if I may.
Wonderful. We can hear from them. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members, Paul Smith with the Regional Council of Rural Counties, representing 30 rural county boards of supervisors, including Inyo County, one of our cherished members. As Ms. Conway put it, this is a bill really to accomplish 2 things. One, to create an interconnecting off-trails network in and around the Inyo County area. The purpose of that, of course, is to make sure those using off-road vehicles have a safe, manageable system and network whereby law enforcement, CHP, the county can make sure that all the rules of the road are being obeyed. The second, of course, is to promote tourism, to promote Inyo County as an attractive place to be used, not just for off-road vehicles, but other things. And by attracting with such a network, we think that's going to be beneficial to the county. This is a carefully crafted measure, lots of protections, as Ms. Conway put it. It is a pilot project. We want to look and see what happens here and see if it works or if it doesn't work. And with that, we can look maybe as a model, maybe not, for other areas of the state to use. So we ask for your aye vote and appreciate all the hard work Ms. Conway has put into this and look forward to its favorable passage.
Great. Thank you.
My name is Amy Granite. I'm Managing Director of the California Off-Road Vehicle Association, or CORVA. I represent thousands of motorized recreation advocates who use trails as a means to many, many ends. We support well-managed and well-maintained trails as a way to keep our enthusiasts safe and to supply activity. We support this bill, and we want to stress that it is a pilot program to evaluate the feasibility of combined use. It does not it is not for any other area other than in your county right now. And what we want to do is really decide, is this a safe measure? It would provide links between legal activities, and it would also provide for all the protections under the California Vehicle Code, which people would have to follow. And it only includes talk about licensed drivers with the appropriate insurance and the appropriate safety regulations as per the California Vehicle Code. So we ask the committee to please give your aye vote.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, do we have other witnesses in support?
I didn't bring any.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Any witnesses in opposition?
So can
Committee members, my name is Jim Metropolis on behalf of the Sierra Club. The Sierra Club, along with 10 other environmental organizations, submitted an opposition letter that everyone should have received. We oppose this bill for a variety of reasons, even though it's only a pilot project. First, numerous new trails have been designated within the Inyo National Forest for OHV use. So there's a lot of trails that they can already use. Second, current law already allows the OHV use to be on up to 3 miles of designated road. This bill is going to extend that past the 3-mile limit. Tourists that come to Inyo County want to do a lot of different things. The National Forest has done a survey. People want to go there to do hiking. They want to go there to go birding. They want to go there to do fishing. And in their survey of people and why they come to the county, those people named fishing, hiking, things of that nature 30, 40% of the time. Less than 2% of the people said they come to the area to use OHVs. Second, or finally, there's a huge liability issue involved with the safety of using OHVs on county roads. And I believe in the letter that we gave to all the committee members, we included a bunch of copies of newspaper articles that show you that numerous accidents and deaths happen when OHVs are used on regular roads. Even though this is a pilot project, we think it sets a bad precedent, huge liability issues, and we ask that you vote no on AB 628. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Other witnesses in opposition?
Good afternoon. Zoe Lidstrom on behalf of the Planning and Conservation League. And for the reasons stated previously by our colleague, we also oppose this bill.
Okay.
Mr.
Right.
Chairman, could I ask a question? Do we have a CHP representative here today? I think it would be helpful.
Great. Captain Brown, please.
And through the chair, Assembly member, my understanding is that the amendments that you've offered to take limit this to 10 miles maximum. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
And for a 5-year period, given the sunset.
Exactly.
And that the expectation is that your local folks will take a look at what they think is most appropriate and then submit that for a maximum of 10 miles approved by CHP. Is that
correct?
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, it'd just be helpful to hear if CHP is okay with all that.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. Captain Brown with the California Highway Patrol. We do not have an official position on the bill. However, we have been working with the author's office to provide the technical amendments that you just repeated and said to help them craft a bill that would work in their area but still maintain safety and oversight of the project, of the pilot project.
Okay. Then, through the chair, any interest in paring the 5 years down to 4, just so that it really is a pilot project and not running that long? Just
I don't know the rules about what a pilot project contains, Senator, but I know that this is of so much importance to Inyo County that as long as it was they're given reasonable time for startup and then 4 years from actual start of when the trails are available, I'm sure that they would consider that a reasonable accommodation because actually this is based on another model, the Paiute Trail, I believe, and it's proven to be very effective. It was a pilot at one time. Now in Utah, let me say it's not in California, in Utah, but it's proved to be so effective. It's mapped, the trails are clearly marked, and that's the whole intention here, is to keep people where they belong and out of the areas where they don't belong, so that it makes it easier for the law enforcement to make sure they're in the right place. They're not on land where they don't belong, disturbing folks. It's connecting a series of old mining trails to gravel, if you will. They're county roads, but they're not maintained, they're not paved. Connecting those routes to keep people safe, to let them connect to the tourist part of Inyo County, but protect the parts of the county that are very important, as we understand.
Thank you.
That was a long yes, I believe, Senator.
Was that you've got some concern from your sponsor. I mean, it's not dispositive to me. I think the combination of local review, CHP review, sunset, limit to 10 miles is enough to make me comfortable with the bill. There is this concern about safety, and obviously you don't want to let too much time go by before you sort of do a check-in again on, are we feeling good about the safety issues?
Yes.
Senator Simitian, if I may, again, Paul Smith with Regional Council of Rural Counties. Definitely understand and appreciate those comments. I think two things. We want a good study, and 5 years, I think, is the period that we felt very comfortable in getting all of the data and all of the understanding. We do not envision this up and running, starting January 2nd of next year. Also, with having the CHP more involved with the review, we think that's going to add some more time as well. Not that that shouldn't or that that's unnecessary. Just think with a 4-year window, given the new dynamics here with the amendments, we think that it would be better to stick with the 5 years and get a really exhaustive understanding of what this is. And as I said in my opening testimony, this may work, it may not. We feel confident it will, but there are things that could arise, and again, it's good to have a good exhaustive study.
How long do we think it will take before the pilot's up and running? Is it a 2-month, 6-month, 1 year to go through? I know government sometimes works a little more slowly than we would like, so you got to go through your county board of supervisors, I assume, and then the CHP. Are we talking at least 6 months before it's up?
I would think that would be the case, Senator. At least, again, I think better my colleague, Mr. Brown, comment on that, because they will be going through a review process and making comments. I know from the county's perspective, they feel very comfortable about where they are in terms of making this thing work from day one, which would be January 1, presumably. But again, I would defer to the CHP as to what their timetable would be.
Well, I think if it takes the better part of the first year, and then if an author has to come back in the final year, the 5th and final year with the new bill, then there really are sort of 3.5 years worth of really good tests. I think that does make sense. Thank you. I'm persuaded.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
Senator Lowenthal. My question has to do with putting my water bottle away. We're talking about the trails and up to 10 miles of county road, right? That potentially could be
yes, sir. No more than 10. Yes, sir.
Can you describe those 10-mile, the county roads, and how do we deal with, I raised this because after, as you recall, I have the bicycle. And so the question that I have is, if we're now talking about potentially a 10-mile segment, are there any issues, if you could describe that drivers might have in terms of passing some of these off-highway vehicles, and are we making some allowances, as we tried to do in that other bill which you worked on, which was crossing the yellow line if it was safe? I'm not advocating that, but I would like to understand how fast these vehicles go, if we're going to allow them an extended amount of time on county roads. Does that pose other issues? And if it does, and I'm supportive of it, how do we plan to deal with those issues?
Sir, the first thing is under current law in 38 026, it allows us, the Highway Patrol, to approve up to a 3-mile segment.
Right.
Under that portion of law, what we're finding and working with the author's office, again, with the technical arrangements and looking at the unique situations that they have in Inyo County, is that you'd arbitrarily come to a 3-mile block. Nothing changes at 4, nothing changes at 5. The surface adjacent to the roadway does not change. The width does not change. So what we're saying for this pilot project, it would be wise, under good supervision, let's extend that distance to get them to the utilities.
And I have no problem. I think that's reasonable.
They're not encroaching the shoulder or the roadway. They're not impacting the lanes.
They're not, how wide are we talking
Most
about?
of these roads that they're dealing with are one step below being paved. They're in that
So they're
hard
not
pack
paved. Okay.
roadways, like you would have the asphalt covered roads. Those roads that are asphalt covered that they would have to traverse or use, the same rules apply, just that they would be traveling adjacent to that maintained portion of roadway.
Okay.
They would not be in conflict where you would have them traveling at 35 miles per hour in a 55 mile per hour zone, and then you'd have traffic backing up and then needing traffic to go over the double yellows to get around them. There's none of that conflict in the combined use setting that they're describing and the roads that they've presented to us.
Because on these roads, you don't see any of those kinds of conflicts.
Not on the roads that they've presented to us. Sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Senator Kehoe.
Ms. Conway, hi. How did, maybe you already addressed this, but how did you deal with the liability issue when the governor vetoed the last bill? He said the liability could result in significant cost to the state.
We felt even in the last bill that the county was accepting the liability, but for some reason it was deemed that it was the state that would have that liability.
The governor's office didn't buy the county taking on the liability? Is
Correct.
that it?
Correct. And so we're working, especially with the amendments, to make sure everybody understands that that CHP will advise and okay what the county plans. We believe that the county is accepting that liability.
All righty. And do we know, so we have the amendments here, but is the committee in agreement that it resolves the liability issue?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make sure that we understand the amendments. So the amendments would add into your existing language of your bill that the segments would be no more than 10 miles in length, and then restore the language that was in your bill last year where CHP attests to that it doesn't create a potential traffic safety hazard. And then all other provisions of the bill would remain as they are now. Is that correct?
I believe that's what we agreed to.
Okay.
I've had so many people agreeing that I want to make sure that we're all agreeing to the same thing.
Okay, well, that's what I understand, but I just wanted to confirm that so that we know what they're voting
So have
on.
we addressed the liability issue, I guess? I'm not clear on that yet.
The language is the same as last year.
Okay.
So.
It's to be determined.
All right. I would. It sounds like a good idea, but I'm going to see this again in Natural Resources, and I just.
Which is where we will take the amendments, Senator.
All right. Then I think I'll wait and see what it looks like when it's in print over there, if it is, and for this afternoon, I think I'll stay off. But I'll take some time with it. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll be happy to.
Any other comments or questions? Do you have something? Senator Simonian, are you done?
No, I guess the quick question I was going to ask is, forgive me, my recollection is last year the bill did not have the 10-mile limitation. Right. And that I think has a lot to do with limiting liability. Essentially, no disrespect to the author, but last year it was a bit of a blank check in terms of what the limit was. So here, I'm feeling a little more secure because you're going to say in the whole of Inyo County, can you find 10 miles that you all think are safe? I'm feeling much more comfortable about that. And then I also think, as I understood it, the county is going to play a role in this version that it did not agree to accept in the previous version, and that makes me feel more comfortable as well. So I'm inclined to support the bill.
Let me just correct, and I never think that Senator Simonian makes a mistake, but it's not just one 10-mile section. Is that what you're agreeing to, is just one 10-mile section?
It's a maximum of 10.
No, each segment is a maximum.
Each segment.
Each segment connects it.
Yeah.
Could we have a complete sentence on that?
So it's not just a 10-mile segment. It is multiple segments that are no longer than 10 miles.
Right. Yeah, Senator DeSania, to make the network connectable, there are segments that will need more than 3 miles to make them connect. There will be more than one segment which requires a 3 to 10 mile
Understood.
portion.
That's the way I understood it. I just wanted to make sure everybody else did. Okay. All right. Ms. Conway, would you like to, if there were no other questions or comments, we've heard from everyone, would you like to close? And
I
there's
would.
a motion by Senator Huff.
I appreciate everyone's help and cooperation in making this clear to me, as well as to the people of Inyo County. I did want to just add one statement to that, is that there has been no additional miles of added to these routes. In actuality, the U.S. Forest Service has reduced almost 700 miles of historic forest routes that used to be open to OHVs, and those are now reduced. Thus, we want to make sure we're keeping people safely on trails that are available to them and make sure they're not in the parts that aren't. And so with that, with the amendments, and with all of your help, I would graciously ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. We'll ask the Secretary to call the roll. The motion is by Senator Huff to do pass to as amended to natural resources.
Can I just interrupt?
Excuse me.
She indicated she wanted to take the amendments in natural resources.
I thought I had to, but if I could do it here, that's fine.
Okay, we're going to take them here.
Oh, great. Thank you.
And then everyone who's on natural resources, you can see it again, but it'll be properly amended by the time it gets to you.
Senators Desaulniers.
Aye.
Desaulniers, aye. Gaines. Harmon. Huff.
Aye.
Huff, aye. Kehoe. Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Pavley. Rubio. Semidian.
Aye.
Semidian, aye.
You have 4 votes, and we'll leave that on call. You need 5 to get it out.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Conway. Thank you for being so patient with us. We are now going to go to item number 9, AB 650 from Assemblymember Blumenfeld, and we appreciate you presenting the bill and appreciate the author allowing you to. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm sure I speak for all the members of the committee that we will be very nice.
Okay. Thank you. So good afternoon, members. Thank you for letting me present AB 650 for Assemblymember Blumenfield. AB 650 establishes a task force of 12 members appointed by the Speaker and the Pro Temp to develop a public transportation blueprint that will lay out the current state of mass transit in the state, what the state needs to do to ensure the system meets demand, how much it would cost, and practical recommendations on how to pay for that system. The task force will provide a list of recommendations and funding options in a report to the legislature by January 31st, 2012. Demand for transit services has increased around the state, especially as fuel prices have risen, traffic congestion has grown, and Californians look for ways to cut commuting expenses and environmental impact. At the same time, however, most long-term transit infrastructure development planning occurs in a series of patchwork measures. AB 650 will bring what's known about California's commuter transit needs, costs, and how to pay for meeting those needs together in one place in a way that has not been thoroughly explored until now. The task force will not impact the general fund and will be funded through the PTA account. And Assemblymember Blumenfield asks for your aye vote.
Nicely done. Witnesses in support.
Catherine Phillips with Environmental Defense Fund. Task forces of concerned citizens and smart citizens have been used over many times by the legislature to help grapple with some tough issues outside of the hubbub of daily legislative activity. This is the point of this task force. We think that it will help the state solve what is a very pressing problem, and that is how to create a sustainable source of funding for transit. We ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Ms. Phil.
Mr. Chairman, members, Mark Watts. Today I'm here representing Santa Clara VTA in support of the measure. I just want to highlight one little part of the bill. The appropriation of the bill. It comes from the public transportation account. I just note for the record that there's a pretty good sizable carryover balance going into the fiscal year and projected to be close to $300 million coming out of the fiscal year. So I think if the question is whether you can afford it, I think you can, and I think you'll get an expert product at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watts.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm Mark Lonergan. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Sacramento Regional Transit District, and I'm just here to register our support for the bill.
Thank you.
Andy Katz, representing Breathe, California, and we're here to support the bill.
Thank you, Andy.
Mr. Chairman, members, Will Gonzalez on behalf of the Vanpool Services, Inc., we're the largest provider of Vanpool services in the nation, in strong support.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez.
Chair, members, Rachel O'Brien on behalf of the California League of Conservation Voters, we are in strong support.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Gus Corey here on behalf of the California Transit Association. We're in support